Jennifer has an honours degree in science from Melbourne University. She then did a diploma of librarianship, and she was the first registrar of the Australian War Memorial, the first registrar of the Australian Maritime Museum. Then, because she was a bit bored, she studied tax law and worked at the tax office for a number of years, then in private practice, and now is a policy advisor to One Nation. And without any disrespect, it's my submission that she has added a huge amount of intellectual grunt to One Nation. Jennifer, you're welcome to come and speak to us.
I want to thank the Southland Church and Sarah and Gary for hosting this evening. I also want to thank every one of you for being here and giving me the opportunity as a Senate candidate for One Nation. In South Australia now, we have a Labor government, but they don't control the numbers in the upper house. They rely on two Greens members to pass legislation. Shortly, I expect we will have a federal Labor government, and they too will rely on the Greens to pass their legislation. I want to put out a warning now about the Greens holding the balance of power in Canberra, because they're going to exact a very high price from the Labor government, because they hold extreme socialist and some would say communist views about how our society should proceed. They see the traditional family and communities of faith as agents of oppression for women and children, and more recently for biological men who identify as women. Further, they know that the traditional family and religious communities stand in the way of the state, increasing its powers over our day-to-day lives. It's one of the reasons that the Greens want to remove funding from Christian schools and private schools in general. The Greens identify One Nation as their political enemy because we stand up for the traditional family and religious communities, and also financial responsibility. It's the reason the Greens recommend their voters put One Nation last when voting. The Liberals and Labor also do the same, which tells you how far the major parties have moved to the left. The Liberals and Labor won't be protecting religious freedom and traditional families, despite what Senator Farrell has told us, because he's in the minority. He's in the minority. In February this year, the Prime Minister wrote to the opposition leader and he offered him a deal. He said if Labor would support the religious discrimination bill, the Liberals would support the removal of Section 38(3) of the Sex Discrimination Act, in what Martin Iles described as nearly the end of Christian education in Australia. He said that because the deal would remove the right of Christian schools to have codes of conduct and a Christian culture. And that is where that legislation lies today. And it hasn't gone forward into the Senate because the Liberal government did not have the numbers and decided that the best way forward was to do nothing, which is what they've done. They failed to keep their promise to pass the Religious Freedom Bill, and worse, they've removed the rights of Christian schools to have a code of conduct and a Christian culture. So my view is you can't trust either of them. One Nation is opposed to the Greens' view of the world, but the Greens perpetuate the myth that One Nation's a party of racists who oppose immigration and refugees coming to Australia, which is not true. We support genuine refugees coming to Australia. We support immigration when it's in the national interest, when it can be successful for Australians and new migrants, and when it's socially cohesive. We do want to limit immigration numbers so that we can take the pressure off our currently overburdened health and education system, to reduce road congestion, to improve job opportunities and wages for Australians, and to improve housing accessibility and affordability. Within 12 days, we go to polling day, and the question is whether or not anybody can stop the Greens in the Senate. I would say that's up to you. The communities of faith in South Australia have the voting power to deny the Greens the power in the Senate. It's a matter now for you to decide. I want to say that I hope that you will consider a vote for me and for inevitably One Nation. Our policies are outlined in this brochure, which is available to everybody as they walk out if they would like. Of course, you can go online as well. I'm the leader of One Nation in South Australia. I'm also the mother of the One Nation state candidate elected less than 2 weeks ago to the Legislative Council in South Australia, and I'm the mother of 3 small children. I'm also a person whose life is guided by their faith, even when no one is looking. I say that because in my life I've seen people do one thing when people are looking and another when they're not. As Christopher said, we're a pro-life party, and our policy on late-term abortion is contained on the back of our policy brochure. I think really, until I get some questions, that's probably all I would like to say. In terms of our economy, we need a strong economy. And the reason we need a strong economy is it pays for the goods and services that we need. And actually, without a strong economy, we're starting to lose our freedoms. My hope is that we'll never find a situation again where people are asked to choose between their freedom of choice over their health and their livelihoods. And that's what's happened in South Australia. And it's happened elsewhere. It should never have happened. There was never the evidence that a vaccinated person would be any less threat to society than an unvaccinated person who took preventative measures. We are a party of pro-choice. That is, we believe that if you're properly informed, you should be able to make your choice to have a vaccination of one of these COVID vaccines. We thoroughly support that. What we don't support is you being coerced and not being given the right amount of information. These vaccines are becoming progressively less effective against the new strains, and still we're under mandates here in South Australia. And it's not getting any better, because very shortly there will be a bill that will be rubber stamped through the state government here. We can expect the same rubber stamping by the Labor government with the help of the Greens unless you vote for a viable party who can stand up. We have already 2 senators, and I expect with a 3rd that we could make that difference to keep the Greens out, and I ask for your support to do that. Thank you.
Michael strikes me as a very sincere, a godly man. He says he loves God. He's run his own finance business and fitness business. And Michael, please come and speak to us.
Thank you, Christopher. And first, I'll just apologise for that photo. That was about 7 years ago. But look at me now. That's what politics for about 5 months does to you. Age about 7 years. But thank you for the introduction, Christopher, and just thank you to everyone for being here tonight. It's great to see people engaging in politics and people who do love God being here to ask questions of the candidates and understand where we truly sit when it comes to the social issues as well as where our party sits on our mainstream policies. To the Christian lobby, you set a good example for us wannabe politicians. You are bold. You do speak the truth, and you attack issues such as abortion and euthanasia and religious discrimination and our school system. And they are big things that are top of my mind and on my heart. I have 3 children, aged 5, 4 and 1, just entering the school system. So as you can understand, I'm quite motivated to get into the Senate and to seek the truth and try and hold that balance on the Conservative side. We know that over recent decades, we've seen a steady decline of morals in our society. We've seen our moral compass somewhat disappear, and we now live in a world where it seems like the woke and progressive agenda is constantly attacking us and trying to remove the Judeo-Christian values that we hold so near and dear. I know that the school system that we have now is nothing like the school that I attended as a child, but it's nothing like the school that my parents attended either. We used to read the Bible. We used to recite the Lord's Prayer in church. We used to put God first in everything that we do, and now it's actually the opposite. We're calling wrong right and right wrong, and I believe that as a young man, I have a duty to stand up and fight against this, and I am encouraged by the number of people in this state who are doing exactly that. And you don't have to run for Parliament, you just have to get involved. You have to join a political party, whether it be Don's Labor Party, he's setting an example there, Jennifer in One Nation, wherever it might be. Join a party, join the Australian Christian Lobby and get involved, because we know in life it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. And we have been quiet, and to me, silence is consent. We need to now speak up, we need to speak the truth, and we need to make sure we stand up before it's too late. Jennifer referred to the Greens, and I was listening to Adam Bandt speak the other day, and if he had his way, we would have no Christian schools right now, and it wouldn't be long if they held the balance of power before, I don't know, we saw Israel Folau a couple of years ago lose his job for reading the Bible, and I'm sure that things can get a lot worse. So it is time to stand up. Our party, we're standing on sort of three platforms at this election. So we've got our freedom platform, we have our fiscal responsibility, because we do believe that the Liberal Party has lost its fiscal responsibility. So we have a plan to clear debt, a plan to protect homeowners from rising interest rates and inflation at the same time. We have a plan to return a large amount of Australian super for investment in our nation, and then downstream processing, which means processing our raw minerals back into the end products. We want to see a country where we export steel and not iron ore. We believe that we can do that. We just need the capital and we need the courage. So our policies, they're bold. You might dismiss them, but I'm happy to answer any questions on them, because we're taking a risk. We're putting out a lot of ideas to the Australian people, and since we released our policies, you can't get the home loan issue off the front page of the newspaper because people are talking about it. We are addressing the big issues in this nation, and I don't think there's any bigger issue than essential freedoms right now. We stand for freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association, freedom of movement, and most importantly, freedom from fear. Fear has been weaponised against our people, and we believe it is a role of leadership. It is the role of those elected to Parliament to fight against the fear, to lower the fear and encourage the Australian people to live their lives without fear, practice personal responsibility and bring back some common sense. Thank you.
During the last state election, I had the privilege of getting to know Damian Buijs. Damian is a small business owner who ran for the seat of Chaffey in the Riverland. He did it despite the importunes of his pastor, who wanted him to be an intern in his church. I remember having coffee with Damian, and I didn't actually tell him what to do. I gave him the options. But Damian chose to step into the community and be involved. He had a fair crack at Chaffey, and he's number 2 candidate for the Nationals. Damian.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here, and thank you to ACL for hosting this event. And how good is it to have this many Conservative candidates willing to stand up and have a crack at Parliament? That's... For me, that is a great encouragement, and it's been a great encouragement hearing from these candidates so far. But a bit about me. My name is Damian Buijs, as you just heard. I'm the South Australian National Party candidate for the Senate this coming election. And if there's one thing that you should know about me, it's that I'm a Christian. And it's my Christian values that inform my political values. But you might be wondering, what is a National Party candidate doing here in Adelaide, considering our tagline is literally the Nationals for regional Australia? And that would be a good question, but I'll let you in on a little secret, and that's I live in Adelaide too. Sure, I have a background of running livestock and I'm a shearer, but as a Metro person, I'm here in Adelaide and have been for 5 years. As a Metro person, I see value in running as a Nationals candidate, and I see value for Metro people to be voting for the Nationals as well. And I'll give you 3 reasons why I believe that the Nationals are a good option. I'll give you a political reason, an economic reason, a political reason, and then also a more of a conviction-based reason. And firstly, the economic reason is the Nationals are a party that focuses on the main industries that prop up our nation's economy. I'm talking about mining and agriculture. Every single one of you in this room uses the products of mined goods. Every single one of you in this room uses the products from agriculture. You trying to tell me something? Oh, okay, sure. Every one of you uses a product of agriculture. We all eat food, we all wear clothes, etc. And every single one of us, we benefit from the money that comes in from the exports that our economy brings in. We benefit from the money that exports bring into our economy. So that's a political reason. A vote for the Nationals is a vote for the industries that support our economy. But there's also a political reason of why to vote for the Nationals. And that is that the Nationals are the 3rd largest party in Australia, and we are able to be in government thanks to the coalition agreement. And I think this is an important point to make at the moment, simply due to the reason that we're seeing a bit of a shift away from people wanting to vote for the 2 major parties. There's a bit of voter dissatisfaction with the major parties, and they're looking for an alternative option. And this alternative option has been looking to independents, looking to minor party candidates. And if they're a good independent, if they're a good minor party candidate, I would strongly recommend consider them. But I would also say consider the fact that by voting in too many independents, too many minor party candidates, we risk destabilising the government. So a vote for a national party gives you an option of voting for a party that is in government, but not one of the 2 major parties that people are a bit disillusioned with. And then I would say a 3rd reason, and for me this is more the biggest reason really, as a conviction-based reason of why to vote for a good quality national candidate. And that is simply that the Nationals, at their core, are a conservative party. We're a party that believes in the Judeo-Christian principles that this nation was founded on, and the Judeo-Christian principles that made this nation great. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, there's been Nationals candidates who have been great advocates for these principles. We've had the Nationals introducing the Children Born Alive Bill, care for children, aborted children that are born alive. There's Nationals that have been advocating for the Religious Freedom Bill. It's Nationals like Dr. Anne Webster at the moment. She's been quite vocal about speaking out against biological men participating in women's sport. So And so as a Christian, for me, I wanted to be part of a party where I could stand up for my Christian values and be backed by my party. But I also want to be part of a party that has a holistic approach to government, that is a party that has been in government for years and has the policy, the maturity and the experience to know how to run a country. Because it's just as important to have good social and family-based values as it is to have policy on building roads that care for our population. But thank you.